Zektar stood on the bridge of his warship, looking out at the stars through the massive viewing window. His claws clicked against the metal rail as he thought about the mission ahead. The ship was called Shadowclaw, and it was one of the most powerful vessels in the Vorthek fleet. Behind him, 12 more warships waited for his command. He was tall, even for a Vorthek warrior. His dark green skin was covered in old battle scars, each one telling a story of victory. His yellow eyes glowed in the dim light of the bridge. Other Vorthek warriors called him the apex predator because he had never lost a battle. In his long life, he had conquered 7 different alien species. Some had fought bravely, others had tried to run, but all had fallen before his tactics and strength. "Commander," said his second-in-command, Velinax, approaching with a datapad. "The intelligence reports are ready for your review." Zektar took the pad and read through the information. The target was a species called humans. They had only learned to travel between stars less than 100 years ago. Their technology was basic compared to the Vorthek Empire's advanced weapons and bioengineering. The reports showed they were physically weak, with no natural claws, no enhanced senses, and no obvious advantages in combat. "They look pathetic," Velinek said, reading over his commander's shoulder. "This will not even be a proper hunt," Zektar nodded slowly. The Vorthek had rules about hunting. They only fought species that could give them a good battle. It was a matter of honor. But the High Command wanted to know about these humans before the full invasion began. Their territory was expanding quickly, and they needed to be dealt with before they became a problem. "Sir, we are approaching the target system," called out the navigation officer from across the bridge. Through the viewing window, Zektar could see a yellow star growing brighter. Around it spun several planets, including the one they were looking for. The human colony was on the 3rd planet, which they called New Portland. The name meant nothing to him, but the strategic value was clear. It was a farming world that supplied food to other human colonies. "What defenses do they have?" Zektar asked. "Very little, sir," Velinax replied, checking his instruments. 3 small patrol ships and some ground-based weapons. Their largest vessel is barely half the size of our smallest warship. Zektar almost felt disappointed. Where was the challenge in this? The humans seemed too weak to be worth his time. But orders were orders, and he had a reputation to maintain. His warriors expected him to handle this mission with his usual efficiency. "Open a channel to all ships," he commanded. The communication officer nodded and activated the fleet-wide broadcast system. Zektar's voice carried to every Vorthek warrior. "In the attack force, warriors of the Empire," he began, his voice strong and clear. "Today we face a new species. They call themselves humans. Intelligence tells us they are weak, but do not let that make you careless. We will demonstrate the might of the Vorthek Empire. We will show them why other species fear our name. This will be quick and decisive." A chorus of battle roars came back through the communication system. His warriors were ready for blood dot as they entered the human system. Zektar studied the colony through his ship's sensors. New Portland looked like a typical farming world. Large fields of crops covered most of the land. Cities were small and spread out. The population was only about 2 million humans, mostly civilians. "The human patrol ships are moving to intercept us," reported the tactical officer. On the main screen, 3 small human vessels appeared. They were moving toward the Vorthek fleet at full speed. Zektar had to admire their courage, even if it was foolish. 3 tiny ships against 13 powerful warships was not a battle, it was suicide. "Are they trying to communicate with us?" Zektar asked. "Yes, sir. They are broadcasting on multiple frequencies." "Should I translate?" "Do it." A moment later, a human voice filled the bridge. It was a female voice, calm and professional despite the hopeless situation. "Unknown vessels. This is Captain Lisa Morgan of the New Portland Defense Force. You have entered human territory without permission. State your intentions or withdraw immediately." Zektar almost laughed. The human actually thought she could give him orders. He gestured to the communication officer. "Open a channel. Let me speak to them." The officer nodded and activated the transmitter. Zektar stepped forward, making sure his most intimidating pose was visible on the transmission. "Human female," he said, his voice carrying the authority of countless victories. "I am Zektar of the Vorthic Empire. Your species has been selected for evaluation. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will take our time." There was a long pause before the human captain responded. When she did, her voice held no fear, only determination. "I see. Well, Zektar of the Vorthic Empire, let me make our position clear. This is human space. These are human people. And we don't surrender to one." The transmission ended. Zektar stared at the screen for a moment, surprised by the human's response. Most species tried to negotiate when faced with overwhelming odds. Some begged for mercy. A few tried to run. But this human had simply refused to back down. "Interesting," he said quietly. "Sir?" Valinax asked. "Nothing. Begin the attack. Disable their ships, but try to keep some of them alive. I want to understand these creatures better." The Vorthak warships spread out in a classic hunting formation. Their weapons were far superior to anything the humans possessed. Energy beams lanced out across space, striking the 3 human patrol ships with devastating accuracy. The first human ship exploded immediately, overwhelmed by the firepower directed at it. The second ship lasted longer, twisting and turning to avoid the incoming fire, but it too was destroyed within minutes. The third ship, Captain Morgan's vessel, managed to fire back. Zektar watched as small missiles streaked toward his fleet. They struck the shields of his warships and exploded harmlessly. The human weapons were too weak to even scratch Vorthak armor. "Pathetic," Valinax commented, but something bothered Zektar. The way the humans had fought was strange. They had not tried to run when it became clear they could not win. Instead, they had fought harder, concentrating their fire on his command ship even when it was obvious their weapons could not hurt it. It was almost as if they were trying to send a message rather than actually damage his fleet. Captain Morgan's ship finally succumbed to the combined firepower of 3 Vorthik warships. As it broke apart, Zektar thought he saw escape pods launching from the wreckage. At least some of the humans had survived. Good. He would need them for questioning. "Prepare the landing forces," he ordered. "We go down to the surface. This evaluation has only just begun." As his ships moved toward the planet, Zektar felt a strange unease he could not explain. The space battle had gone exactly as planned, but something about the humans' behavior troubled him. They had faced certain death without showing any fear. In his experience, that was either the mark of a truly dangerous enemy or a species too stupid to understand when they were beaten. He would soon find out which one humans were. The landing ships descended through the atmosphere of New Portland like falling stars. Zektar stood in the lead transport, watching the human colony grow larger through the viewports. The cities looked peaceful from above, with no signs of panic or evacuation. That struck him as odd. Most species would be running by now. "Sir, we are picking up strange communications from the surface," reported the communication officer. "The humans are broadcasting something they call Protocol 7. "What does it mean?" Zektar asked. "Unknown, sir. Our translators cannot determine the significance." Zektar filed this information away for later consideration. He had learned long ago that the details other warriors ignored often proved important in battle. The transport touched down in the main plaza of the largest human city. The doors opened with a hiss, and Zektar stepped out onto alien soil. His warriors followed, their weapons ready and their senses alert. The air smelled strange, full of unfamiliar scents from human agriculture and industry. The plaza was empty except for a small group of humans, waiting near a fountain in the center. Zektar approached them, noting their relaxed postures. They should have been terrified, but instead they seemed almost calm. The leader was a human male in military uniform. He was shorter than Zektar, with brown hair and steady blue eyes. Despite being vastly outnumbered and outgunned, he showed no fear. "I am Lieutenant Jake Harrison, New Portland Marine Corps," the human said. "I assume you are in charge of this invasion force. I am Zektar, and this is not an invasion. It is an evaluation. Your species will be tested to determine if you are worthy of joining the Vorthic Empire, or if you should be eliminated." Lieutenant Harrison nodded as if this made perfect sense. "I see. And if we refuse both options? Then you die fighting, which is at least honorable. Good to know where we stand." Harrison looked back at his small group of soldiers. There were maybe 20 humans facing 300 Vorthic warriors. "Boys, you heard the alien. They want to test us. Let's give them a proper human welcome." What happened next would haunt Zektar for the rest of his life. The humans did not retreat or surrender. Instead, they attacked. But it was not the desperate, wild assault of a cornered animal. It was coordinated, planned, and executed with deadly precision. The plaza erupted into chaos as the humans opened fire from concealed positions that Zektar had not even noticed. Lieutenant Harrison and his Marines had turned the entire plaza into a killing field. Every statue, every bench, every decorative element had been rigged with explosives or converted into a firing position. The Vorthak warriors, caught in the open, suffered heavy casualties in the first few seconds. Zektar dove for cover behind an overturned vehicle, his mind racing to understand what was happening. His warriors were superior fighters with better weapons and armor, but the humans had prepared for this battle in ways he had not anticipated. "Take cover and return fire," he shouted to his troops, but the humans were not done with their surprises. As his warriors moved to find defensive positions, more explosions rocked the plaza. The humans had rigged the entire area with improvised bombs, turning their own city into a weapon against the invaders. Through the smoke and chaos, Zektar saw Lieutenant Harrison moving between cover points with impossible speed and precision. The human was wounded, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead, but he continued to fight with the same calm determination he had shown during their conversation. "Volinax," Zektar called to his second-in-command. "Flank them from the east." "Already tried, sir. The humans have the entire sector trapped. Every street, every building, every approach is covered with their weapons." Zektar felt a chill that had nothing to do with the planet's temperature. He had walked into a carefully prepared ambush, and his superior numbers meant nothing if he could not bring them to bear effectively. The battle raged for 2 hours. The humans fought with a ferocity that defied logic. When they ran out of ammunition, they used improvised weapons. When those failed, they attacked with their bare hands. Lieutenant Harrison himself tackled a Vorthak warrior twice his size, using some kind of human martial art to break the alien's neck despite the size difference. But what truly disturbed Zektar was the way the humans coordinated their efforts. They communicated through hand signals, shared ammunition without being asked, and covered each other's movements with perfect timing. It was as if they shared a single mind dedicated to causing maximum damage to their enemies. When the fighting finally ended, 13 of Harrison's Marines were dead. But they had taken 67 Vorthic warriors with them. The mathematics of the exchange horrified Zektar. At this rate, his entire invasion force would be wiped out by a few thousand human defenders. Lieutenant Harrison was among the survivors, though badly wounded. Zektar approached him as medical personnel worked on both human and Vorthak casualties. "Your resistance was impressive," Zektar admitted, "but pointless. We have thousands more warriors, and you have lost most of your soldiers." Harrison looked up at him with eyes that held no defeat despite his injuries. "You don't understand, do you? This wasn't about winning. This was about sending a message." "What message?" "That we don't break. Hit us, and we hit back harder. Kill us, and we take you with us. We are not your prey, alien. We are your nightmare." Before Zektar could respond, new explosions echoed across the city. His communication officer ran up with urgent news. "Sir, we are under attack by human civilians. They are using vehicles loaded with explosives, ramming our positions throughout the city." Zektar turned to stare at Lieutenant Harrison, who managed a weak smile despite his pain. "Protocol 7, Harrison explained. "Total resistance. Every human on this planet is now a combatant. Men, women, even the elderly. We don't have soldiers and civilians, alien. We just have humans, and we all fight when threatened." Throughout the city, Zektar's forces were discovering the truth of Harrison's words. A human female named Rebecca Kane, who had been a factory worker just hours before, drove a fuel truck loaded with explosives into a Vorthak command post. The explosion killed 37 alien warriors and destroyed millions of credits worth of equipment. An elderly human male named George Butler, armed with nothing but an old hunting rifle, held off an entire Vorthak squad for 20 minutes before they finally overwhelmed his position. But by then, other humans had used the time to prepare more ambushes elsewhere in the city. Children as young as 12 were carrying messages between resistance groups, moving through the city's sewers and maintenance tunnels to coordinate attacks on Vorthak positions. They were not fighting directly, but their intelligence gathering was devastatingly effective. As night fell on New Portland, Zektar realized he had made a terrible mistake. This was not an evaluation of human capabilities. This was a lesson in why his people should have left humanity alone. The humans were not strong in the way the Vorthak understood strength, but they possessed something far more dangerous: the absolute refusal to accept defeat. His communication officer approached with another report. "Sir, long-range sensors are detecting multiple human fleets moving toward this system. They appear to be military vessels." Zektar felt the cold touch of real fear for the first time in his long career. If the humans on the ground were this dangerous, what would their trained military forces be like? How long until they arrive? He asked. 18 hours, sir." Zektar looked back at Lieutenant Harrison, who was being carried away on a stretcher. The human had passed out from blood loss, but somehow Zektar knew the man was still smiling. The evaluation was far from over, and already Zektar was beginning to suspect that his people had chosen the wrong species to test. The human fleets arrived exactly when predicted. Zektar watched from his command ship as dozens of human vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Even from this distance, he could see they were different from the small patrol ships he had destroyed earlier. These were warships built for serious combat. Admiral Patricia Stone, commanding the Third Fleet, came the transmission from the lead human vessel. "Zektar of the Vorthak Empire, you have attacked a human colony and killed human citizens. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Zektar studied the human fleet through his sensors. They had 43 ships compared to his remaining 11. The mathematics were not in his favor, but Vorthak vessels were still superior in firepower and armor. He might still win this battle. "Human Admiral," he replied, "your species is being evaluated for worthiness. Your resistance has been noted, but it changes nothing. Surrender now and your deaths will be swift." The response came not in words but in action. The human fleet split into 3 groups and accelerated toward his position at maximum speed. Zektar had expected negotiation or at least some hesitation. Instead, the humans were attacking immediately with everything they had. "All ships, battle. Formation," he ordered his remaining commanders. "Prepare for engagement." The space battle that followed was unlike anything in Zektar's long military career. The humans fought with the same desperate courage their ground forces had shown, but they also demonstrated tactical innovations that caught him completely off guard. Admiral Stone's flagship, a heavy cruiser called Liberty's Edge, led a direct assault on Zektar's center formation. But instead of engaging at long range, where Vorthok weapons had the advantage, the human ships closed to point-blank range where their smaller, more maneuverable vessels could overwhelm his larger warships. Commander Alex Turner led one of the human assault groups in a move that defied all military logic. His ship, the Defiant Star, deliberately rammed a Vorthok destroyer, sacrificing itself to create an opening for other human vessels to exploit. The collision destroyed both ships, but it allowed 3 human cruisers to get past Zektar's defensive line. "Sir, they are using ramming attacks," the Lenax reported in disbelief. "They are sacrificing their own ships to damage ours." Zektar watched in horror as another human captain, a female named Susan Parker, commanding the vessel New Hope, repeated Turner's tactic. Her ship slammed into a Vorthok battlecruiser at full speed, the explosion tearing both vessels apart. But before her ship was destroyed, Parker's crew had transmitted detailed scans of Vorthok armor weaknesses to the rest of the human fleet. "They are learning from every engagement," Zektar realized with growing dread. "Each sacrifice teaches them something new about our defenses." The humans were not just throwing their lives away randomly. Every desperate attack, every ramming maneuver, every seemingly suicidal assault was gathering intelligence that made the next wave of attacks more effective. They were using their own deaths as weapons against him. Captain Helen Brooks commanded a group of smaller human vessels that used tactics Zektar had never encountered. Instead of trying to match Vorthok firepower, they launched thousands of small drones that overwhelmed his point defense systems. While his gunners were busy shooting down the mechanical swarms, human torpedoes slipped through his defenses and struck his ships' weak points. But the most disturbing development came when Zektar's sensors detected something impossible. 3 of his own warships were broadcasting human identification codes. "The Lenax, explain this," he demanded. His second-in-command checked his instruments with shaking claws. "Sir, it appears the humans have somehow captured the Shadow Talon, Blood, Drinker, and Dark Vengeance. They are using our own ships against us." Through the tactical display, Zektar watched as Colonel Danny Carter led human boarding parties that had somehow taken control of 3 Vorthok vessels. The humans had not just captured his ships. They had figured out how to operate them in a matter of hours. "How is this possible?" Valenax asked. Zektar studied the battle data streaming across his screens. The humans were not just brave or desperate. They were adaptable in ways that challenged everything he thought he knew about warfare. They learned faster than any species he had ever encountered, turning each defeat into a lesson that made them stronger. On the surface of New Portland, the ground battle had evolved into something even more terrifying. General Robert Hayes had arrived with 2 divisions of human Marines, but they were not fighting a conventional war. Instead, they were coordinating with the civilian resistance to create what they called total warfare. Sam Mitchell, who had been a factory worker before the invasion, was now leading teams of humans who were reverse engineering captured Vorthok equipment. In less than 12 hours, they had figured out how Vorthok energy weapons worked and were building their own versions using human manufacturing techniques. Dr. Amy Foster, a biochemist who had been studying crop diseases, had abandoned her peaceful research to develop biological weapons specifically designed to target Vorthok physiology. Her weapons were not meant to kill quickly, but to weaken and disorient, making the alien warriors easier targets for human soldiers. The coordination between human forces was beyond anything Zektar had seen in decades of warfare. Information flowed instantly between ground troops, naval forces, and civilian resistance groups. When a human scout discovered a weakness in Vorthic armor, every human fighter knew about it within minutes. When a new tactic proved effective, it was immediately shared across the entire human network. Captain Helen Brooks, now commanding one of the captured Vorthic vessels, began broadcasting propaganda throughout the system. Her messages were not directed at humans, but at other alien species who might be watching the battle. "This is Captain Brooks of the human vessel formerly known as Shadow Talon," her voice carried across space. "Let this be a lesson to any species that thinks humanity is weak. We do not start fights, but we finish them. We do not seek conquest, but we will not be conquered. Attack us, and you will learn why our planet bred survivors." The propaganda was devastatingly effective. Zektar realized that even if he somehow won this battle, word would spread throughout the galaxy that the mighty Vorthic Empire had been bloodied by a supposedly inferior species. His people's reputation as invincible warriors would be destroyed. As the battle raged into its second day, Zektar's forces were reduced to less than 1,000 warriors scattered across 4 damaged ships. The humans had lost more vessels, but they seemed to have an endless supply of reinforcements arriving from other colonies. Lieutenant Jake Harrison, who had somehow survived his injuries from the Plaza battle, was now coordinating attacks on Vorthic positions throughout New Portland. Despite being wounded, he had refused medical evacuation and continued fighting with the same calm determination Zektar had first witnessed. "Sir," Valinax approached with the latest casualty reports. "We have lost over 80% of our force. The humans have captured most of our equipment and are using it against us. They have also taken prisoners for interrogation." Zektar felt the weight of complete military disaster settling on his shoulders. This was not an evaluation anymore. This was a rout. The humans had taken everything he thought he knew about warfare and turned it upside down. "Sir," his communication officer called out, "we are receiving a transmission from Admiral Stone. Put it through." The human admiral's face appeared on his screen. She looked tired but determined, and her eyes held no mercy. "Zektar," she said simply, "you came here to evaluate us. Consider your evaluation complete. Withdraw now, or we will finish what you started." For the first time in his long career, Zektar found himself considering retreat. But retreat would mean admitting that humans were superior to Vorthic warriors. It would mean accepting that his people had made a terrible mistake. As he struggled with this decision, another wave of human reinforcements dropped out of hyperspace. These were not military vessels, but civilian ships that had been hastily converted for war. Thousands of human volunteers were arriving to join the fight, each one ready to die rather than let their people be conquered. Zektar finally understood the truth that would haunt him forever. Humanity was not weak, they were the most dangerous species in the galaxy because they would never, ever give up. Zektar's command ship drifted powerless through space, its engines destroyed by human weapons built from captured Vorthic technology. Around him, the bridge was dark except for emergency lighting. Most of his crew was dead or wounded. His mighty fleet of 13 warships had been reduced to a single crippled vessel. Through the cracked viewing window, he could see human ships surrounding his position. They could have destroyed him hours ago, but instead they waited. It was a psychological tactic that worked perfectly. The waiting was almost worse than death. "Sir," whispered Valanax from where he lay wounded near the tactical station, "the humans are requesting communication." Zektar nodded weakly. His pride was broken, but his curiosity remained. What did the humans want with him now that they had won? The main screen flickered to life, showing the face of Admiral Patricia Stone. Behind her, Zektar could see the bridge of her flagship, crowded with human officers who looked tired but victorious. "Zektar," Admiral Stone said, her voice calm and professional, "I am prepared to offer you terms." "Terms?" Zektar's voice was barely a whisper. "You have won. Kill me and be done with it. That is one option, the Admiral agreed. But we have a better idea. We want you to live. Zektar stared at her in confusion. In his culture, defeated enemies were either killed or enslaved. The idea of letting a conquered foe go free made no sense. Why? He asked. Because you are going to carry a message back to your people, Admiral Stone explained. You are going to tell them exactly what happened here. You are going to warn them never to attack humanity again. Before Zektar could respond, another human appeared on the screen. It was Lieutenant Jake Harrison, his head wrapped in bandages but his eyes still sharp and determined. You came here to evaluate us, Harrison said. Well, here is your evaluation. We are not conquerors like you. We do not seek to rule other species. We just want to be left alone to live our lives and raise our children in peace. But, Admiral, Stone continued, if you or anyone else threatens us, threatens our families, threatens our way of life, then you will face what you have faced here. We will not stop. We will not surrender. We will not negotiate. We will fight with everything. We have until either you are gone or we are all dead. Zektar thought about the battles he had witnessed. The human civilians who had turned their own city into a weapon. The soldiers who had fought to the death rather than surrender. The pilots who had rammed their ships into his vessels without hesitation. The way they had learned from every defeat and turned it into victory. Your species is insane, he said quietly. Lieutenant Harrison actually smiled at that. Maybe we are. But that is what makes us dangerous. We do not think like other species. We do not accept limits that others accept. When you corner us, we do not break. We become something else entirely. Something worse than death, Admiral Stone added. We become humans with nothing left to lose. A new voice joined the conversation. Major Chris Allen appeared on the screen, his uniform dirty from ground combat, but his bearing proud and strong. I want to show you something, Allen said. He held up a data pad showing casualty reports. Do you know how many humans died in this battle? Over 3,000. Soldiers, civilians, volunteers, people who had never fired a weapon before yesterday. They all died fighting your forces. Zektar felt a mix of pride and horror. His warriors had made the humans pay a heavy price for their victory. But do you know what happened when word spread to other human colonies? Allen continued. 12 million humans volunteered for military service in the last 48 hours. 12 million. For every human you killed, 4,000 more stepped forward to take their place. The number hit Zektar like a physical blow. Even if his entire invasion fleet had been successful, even if he had conquered New Portland completely, the human response would have been overwhelming. They were not just a species, they were a force of nature. We are offering you a choice, Admiral Stone said. You can die here with whatever honor you think you have left. Or you can live and serve a greater purpose. You can prevent a war that would destroy both our species. Zektar looked around his ruined bridge. Velinax was watching him with yellow eyes that held no judgment, only loyalty. The few surviving crew members waited for his decision. In Vorthic culture, death in battle was honorable. Survival after defeat was not. But as he thought about what he had witnessed, Zektar realized that honor was not the most important thing anymore. If he died here, other Vorthic commanders would eventually come looking for him. They would make the same mistakes he had made. They would underestimate humanity and face the same devastating consequences. If I return to my people with news of this defeat, he said slowly, they will consider me a coward. They may execute me for failing. That is possible, Admiral Stone admitted. But if you do not return, they will send another fleet. And another. And eventually, we will have to take the war to them. Is that what you want? Zektar thought about human fleets arriving at Vorthak worlds. He imagined human soldiers fighting in the cities of his people, with the same desperate determination they had shown here. He pictured human civilians turning their homes into weapons the way they had done on New Portland. "No," he whispered. "That cannot happen." Lieutenant Harrison leaned forward on the screen. "Then help us prevent it. Be the voice of reason your people need to hear. Tell them the truth about what happens when you attack humans." "What truth is that?" Zektar asked. "That we are not prey," Harrison said simply. "We are the predators who learn to think. We are the species that conquered its own world, not through strength or speed or natural weapons, but through sheer stubbornness and the refusal to quit. We are survivors, and we will do whatever it takes to keep surviving." Admiral Stone activated a control on her command chair. "We are transmitting coordinates to you now. They will take you safely out of human space. You have our word that you will not be harmed or followed. But understand this, Zektar. This is the only time we will show such mercy. If any Vorthic vessel enters human territory again, we will respond with immediate and overwhelming force." Zektar nodded slowly. He understood the message. Humanity was giving him a chance to save both species from a war that would benefit no one. "One more thing," said a new voice. Dr. Amy Foster appeared on the screen, her lab coat stained with chemicals. "From her weapon research, we have developed countermeasures for every Vorthic biological system we encountered. If you force us to fight again, we will be ready." The transmission ended, leaving Zektar alone with his thoughts and his surviving crew. After several minutes of silence, he made his decision. "Set course for Vorthak space," he ordered. "Sir?" Valinax asked weakly. "We are going home," Zektar said. "And we are going to tell them about the humans. All of it. Every detail, every horror, every lesson." As his damaged ship limped away from New Portland, Zektar began composing his report in his mind. It would be the most important document in Vorthic history. It would save his people from making the greatest mistake they could possibly make. He would tell them about the species that looked weak but fought like demons, about the civilians who became soldiers in an instant, about the military forces that learned from every defeat and adapted faster than seemed possible, about the culture that valued freedom over life and would die rather than submit. Most importantly, he would tell them about the choice humanity had given him. They could have killed him easily, but instead they had shown mercy. Not because they were weak, but because they were strong enough to choose when to fight and when to forgive. Years later, Zektar would become the most famous warrior in Vorthak history, not for his victories, but for his survival. His report would be required reading in every military academy in the Empire. His warning would prevent countless wars and save millions of lives. He would spend the rest of his days as an ambassador, ensuring that no other species made the mistake of underestimating humanity. He would tell anyone who would listen about the species that appeared harmless but could become the most dangerous force in the galaxy when threatened. And sometimes, in quiet moments, he would remember Lieutenant Harrison's words and wonder if the humans were right. Maybe they were all insane. But if so, it was a beautiful and terrible madness that had saved both their species from mutual destruction. The Vorthic had come to hunt humans and had discovered instead that they had found something far more dangerous than any predator, a species that simply refused to die.